Welcome to the Get in the Fight podcast. My name is Nate Whitson, and I'm the founder of Get in the Fight Ministries and our exclusive online fight club for Christian men. Everything we do here is dedicated to helping Christian men become the men that God meant for them to be. So if you're looking for helpful content and conversations that can help you to grow and become the man that God made you to be, then you're in the right place. But before we get started, please do me a huge favor and be sure to subscribe, click the like button, and then leave us a 5-star review. Doing that helps us to reach more men who are looking for content just like this. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our mission and how to get involved or how to join the Fight Club, then head on over to getinthefight.club. That's getinthefight.club and learn more today. But without further ado, it's time to get in the fight. So let's go. Hey guys, welcome to the show. This is Nate Whitson. I am your host of the Get in the Fight podcast, and grateful for you being here today. If you stumbled on this and you're thinking, I have no idea who this guy is or how I got here, then let me just tell you really quickly. We are really geared towards Christian men who want to live bigger lives, live better lives, become the men that God meant for us to be. So we have conversations on here once a week. It's a lot more than once a month now. It's once a week. We have conversations with Christian men about doing that very thing, becoming the men that God meant for us to be. How do we live those lives that God intended for us to live? And so we talk about all kinds of things like being men of honor, men of discipline, men of strength, men of joy, men that follow hard after God and stop living complacent lives. We're just trying to play the role that God meant for us to play and have conversations about that. So again, if you're new to Get in the Fight, thanks for listening. Do me a favor. If you like today's conversation, simply share it with somebody that you think could benefit from it. That means a lot. Subscribe to the show, like it, comment. All of that helps us to reach more men. So thanks for that. Thanks for being here. Today is super exciting for me. I've been trying to get on the calendar of my friend, Tim Taylor. He is our friend, but he's also a mentor. He's our physician assistant at the place that we go to for our healthcare. We work with Tim directly, so me and my whole family, and he's made a big difference to us in a lot of different ways with conversations about our health. And Tim is also a Christian man, family man, and he works hard himself at doing the things that we talk about here in this ministry. So I was begging him, Tim, please come on. And we finally have been able to make that work. So grateful for that. But as we get ready to jump into this, we're going to talk about different topics that pertain to men, things like sexual health issues, nutrition, low energy, maybe chronic pain, getting motivated, and maybe just a host of other things. We'll see where it goes. But I say that to you so that you know going into this, okay, what is this about? We're going to talk about all those things that Tim does on a day-to-day basis. So Tim, thanks for joining and welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm excited. This has been a long time coming, and part of that's on me, but I'm super excited that we finally got this down.
Yeah, man, no worries. We're just glad that it can work for both of our schedules, and obviously you've got a lot of things going on in your life between being a husband, a father, working at your job, working with Veritable Wellness, which we'll open up and talk about at some point here, and I want guys to get connected to. But let's start at the beginning and just tell us a little bit, tell us who you are, your background, and a little bit about what got you into where you're at today.
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like, you and I share a lot of those similarities. Husband, a handful of kids, do a job, got something on the side we try and do that we're passionate about. And so glad to have been able to, our paths have crossed and kind of, share those experiences and trying to just help people. So again, super excited to just have the opportunity to be here to talk today and be a part of what you're doing. So thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how did I get into this? Really, it starts back in high school, to be honest. If I go back really to how I got into my medical career, that's kind of where that started. I had the dream of like every kid in America, right? I'm going to go play sports. That was it, man. Like I was gonna be the Derek Jeter, the Cal Ripken Jr., all those guys in the middle infield. That's what I did. I laugh now because now that I'm gonna be 40 this year, and I look back at what youth sports has become, and I see how what I was doing back then was really the genesis of what we have today in youth sports, where that just runs our lives, as parents
Mhm.
sometimes, which is crazy. And so I really see that kind of laid the foundation for just, fitness, exercise, health, being active, taking care of yourself to kind of achieve, that optimized kind of just function of what your body can do, and just kind of put the best service, you know, addition of yourself out on the field. By the time I got to high school, we had a pretty tragic accident. My dad had a traumatic brain injury, and that changed my world. My dad and I were like this. Couldn't have asked for a better father. He was my best friend, my coach, everything. And his life was turned upside down. The injury actually wasn't supposed to survive when he had it. And that sent us through a journey of healthcare that I had never been exposed to before. I didn't know what a PA was, let alone a nurse, for that matter. And, so as I was exposed to different, careers in the medical field, I saw that, wow, this is something different. And I think there was really kind of a passion that changed as far as, my desire to even be in sports, just because, again, with my dad being so close to that, it was kind of like I lost an appendage, that was part of that whole drive and dream. And so I think God was really using that event to direct me to what I think my main purpose was in life and what he had in store for me. And so that a bunch of events just turned into me going into medicine. Ended up going to PA school instead of medical school, traditional like MD school. Did that for a long time, and then graduated, started, working in family medicine, and realized that the enigma and machine that is medicine today is not what I intended to be helping people with. I still think God uses the opportunities that I have to help people. So I don't think I can't help people, but I felt like I could do it better. And so I've had the opportunity to be a part of Whole Family Direct Care, which is, as you know, a cash pay service that allows me to spend a lot more time with people and understand where they're at, what they're doing, and what's going on with their health, not driven by policies and, procedures of how to run the business of medicine that oftentimes adulterates the quality of care people get. And I think that's why a lot of people are frustrated with the healthcare system. And so we've kind of taken out the middleman of insurance and the business of it, and are able to just really kind of, I think, keep that relationship pure and the patient centered. But in doing that, having more time, education, and working with people, I realized that there was still an opportunity to do better, getting at the root cause of things instead of still prescribing medicine, because we still practice traditional medicine, with prescriptions and things like that. And I was seeing that, man, we can really, I think, do better at getting into the root cause of a lot of this stuff. And so that's where Veritable Wellness came out of, where the three arms of that really are what I saw in family medicine as kind of the main core of it, which is chronic pain, metabolic disease, so i.e. diabetes, hypertension, obesity, hypercholesterolemia, things like that. And then really, quite honestly, family medicine carries a lot of the burden of mental health, depression, anxiety, things like that. And I do believe that we are created to move and be active people. And I think when we're not, that contributes a lot to our mental health. And so I think through movement and exercise at Veritable Wellness, we can actually bring more joy through just doing what we were created to do, to move and be active. And so that's kind of how I've gotten to where I'm at. That's probably a little bit more what I needed.
No, that's fantastic. And in fact, so when my wife and I met Tim for the first time, I think it came as a referral, like most good things are. Somebody's had a great experience and said, hey, you should check out this place. And it took me a long time to figure out, like, so what is this exactly? How does this work? And it was just such a throwback idea of exactly what you just said. And I just want to say again, like, I'll just make a plug for it. It's such a cool way of doing healthcare, because Tim had said in the very beginning, like, hey, like, you don't always have to come in, but I'm available. Like, text me if if your kids get hurt, text me if you're not sure if you need to come in, and you can get a hold of me. Like, there is no experience like that in healthcare outside of this that I know of, where you can actually get right in front of the person who helps you make these decisions and go, and we've done this where I'm like, hey, Tim, will you look at this scab or whatever it is? And you're like, oh no, that's fine. Like, do this, do that, or whatever. How cool
Yeah.
is that for healthcare? It is exactly what you guys promise, in such a cool way of doing that. So I'm a big fan, and I think people should probably look and consider options like this if they're certainly local to me here in Michigan, but also just wherever you live, if there are other options like this. In fact, like, are there options like that for people in other places?
Yeah. So I was going to say, I know you kind of have listeners kind of all over. I'm not sure that there's many in kind of that 50-mile radius of kind of Marshall, which is where our office is, / Battle Creek, Albion area. We get patients from all over, like Lansing. I have people coming from Grand Rapids to see me. They certainly have direct primary. The service is called direct primary care. So if you're looking for just kind of the generic delivery of healthcare, it's called direct primary care. And I would echo what you're saying, that if you are not aware of this or have not heard of this, you need to like look into it and find someone in your area. If you are aware of it, I would just strongly encourage you, if you've just kind of heard about it and it's like, oh, that's going to be expensive because it's cash and we're not using insurance. It's not. It's actually way cheaper. So, take a look into it and really, I think, spend the time, investing and researching that. And I can get you a link for a map. It's called DPC Mapper that you can put at the end of the show notes or something that will help people find one near them.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'll have some links in the show notes here. And then you can always directly reach out to me if you're a listener and want to know more or forget, or just want to figure out how to connect with Tim. A big part of this for me is that you find him and that you reach out to him. I know Tim's heart is to serve people well and to help with these things. And so he is the kind that if he couldn't help you, he would say, hey, here's where you should go, or here's what you need. So we'll make sure you know how to get a hold of Tim today. I want to go back, Tim, to a few years ago. We had just met recently, and then you'd kind of pulled up like the history of some of my meetings with you, and we looked at this recently. I don't remember the year, you might remember, but I remember coming to sit with you, and I was just kind of in this bad place. This was pre Get in the Fight ministry. And I was sitting in your office. I think I wasn't even there for me. I think I was there with one of my kids, maybe. And I was just telling you, this could be wrong. I might be mixing memories, but I remember like saying, dude, my back is just killing me. I'm achy. I'm forgetting things. Like I literally thought maybe like I was having a problem with my brain, like maybe early onset something. I was forgetting people's names that I knew. Like the brain fog was super heavy. I weighed more than I ever had. I was just like a mess. I had stopped trying. A lot of this ministry was birthed in that very moment in a lot of ways of me talking to you, knowing that I had gotten out of the fight to be a better man, to live a better life, a bigger life. And so the phrases that I use, the conversations that I use, a lot of that like mixed right into you and I meeting one day. And I was like, can you help me come up with a plan of action, something to help me get back on course? And since that time, it's really led to a lot of spiritual change and growth in me. It led to a lot of this ministry. And so I just want to like quickly just talk for a second in your experience of like the connection between stories like mine, where there's just like, I'm not physically living my best life and I'm trying to live my spiritual life and they're not working. Like, what is the connection between those two things in your experience and opinion?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great observation because, we talk about this, I think, more in the academic settings, at least the way I was trained. I went to an undergrad program that was very traditional in their biblical beliefs, yet they taught us a lot about the evolutionary model of thought and how we got here. And one of the things that I remember them kind of pounding into our head was that, evolutionists really will approach their worldview on our body and our health from a standpoint of strictly a biological process. We are chemical reactions and that's it. And everything can be explained by that, right? It's very reductionistic in nature. And the reality is part of that is true in the sense that God is in his wisdom and his, his just ability to be creative and to, be intelligent, create a world that we can understand in predictable laws and patterns to follow, right? And so there is a part of us that is very physical that I think he expects us to understand and know and have a responsibility of. He's expected us to, take care of the world that he's created. And so I think that is very much a part of who we are as humans, and taking care of our bodies, right? To honor, you know, the creation and not just the world, but our bodies that he's created after his likeness, right? And so I think that is the physical part of, when we see illness and sickness become a challenge in our own physical health, we tend to struggle with the second half of that, which is the spiritual component of who we are. And this is where the evolutionists or the modern kind of approach to our health system has just totally wiped clean, right? Mm-hmm. They don't see us as spiritual beings, and the part that comes into that. And so I do think that because the way God has created us in a very physical sense, right, but obviously a very spiritual sense in a relationship with him, those two are neatly kind of come together in different avenues. And, whether that's our mental health or our physical health, our spiritual health, a lot of that actually does fit together very nicely, and they will play off of each other.
Yeah, no doubt. In fact, I will challenge guys in this and say, again, I think of myself in your office feeling like I felt. You cannot be the man that God meant for you to be in your relationship with your kids when you come home and you're just mentally exhausted because you're eating crap and not living right. You're not moving at all. You're not physically taking care of the body that God has given to you. You can't be mentally your best, which means you're going to overreact when the kids are, being kids. When you're in traffic, you're just not mentally as strong. You're exhausted and you're tired and you're weaker there. You're not going to be great sexually. You're not going to be great relationally. You're not going to be great, in any area of your life. You're not going to be the exact man that God meant for you to be when those things are disconnected. And so a lot of times now, like in my own journey and helping men in theirs, I'll say, like, do you want to change your life? Just start taking a walk down the road. Do like the bare minimum. I think this might have come from conversations I had with you of like, just start with what you could do. Like you could do 10 push-ups, 10 squats, 10 sit-ups, and walk down the road and back. That was literally my starting point with you. Yeah. And I think it was the opening gate of like, okay, well, I could at least do that, as crappy as I feel. Like, so I think a lot of times, like when a guy comes to you, and he's mean, like, let's just say that some guy listening is just like, man, that is me. I'm apathetic. I'm lazy. I'm overweight. I'm just exhausted. Like, how do you help somebody who comes in and sits down with you? They reach out to you from listening to this and they say, like, just help me get started. Talk to that guy who's coming in with that same kind of feeling. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And if you are, please do me a big favor and simply get engaged in a simple way. For you, that might be clicking the like button or maybe subscribing to the show. For others, it may be commenting on a show that really stands out to them, or maybe it's just copying the URL and texting it to a friend, or pasting that into your social media, or sharing it via text, whatever it is. All of those things make a huge difference for us, and it helps us to reach more Christian men who are trying to live bigger and better lives. So, number one, thank you for being a listener, and thank you for being a part of this community and part of this show. We appreciate it more than you know, and we appreciate you getting engaged and helping us out. Thanks so much. Now back to the show.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. I do want to back up real quick to the previous question. Sure. Just because I want to make sure I'm clear in what I'm saying. I don't want to come off or anyone to hear like, if you feel like maybe life has caught up, and because I mean, you've shared your story. I've been there too, Nate. I mean, it's not like I've done this perfectly. I mean, part of why I've arrived where I'm arrived is because I have learned along the way the struggle, right? Sure. I mean, 5 kids, going to medical school and then working in medicine, right? Like life gets away from you really, really fast. And so, and I was doing all of those things with the intention of providing for my family, which is what I'm called to do. So I don't want to leave anyone here with what I just said, that, if you feel this way, you're doing these things, that, you're somehow a terrible man, or you're in
Yep.
blatant sin, right? Or something like that. It's just, I think sometimes it's good to pause and look at some of the priorities that we're looking at and saying, okay, how can I maybe do this better so that I can be more optimized in both my physical and spiritual health there. So I think it's important to look at that. I don't want to be, the browbeater,
Mhm.
over condemning someone because they feel like they're overwhelmed and physically beat down because they're literally trying to do the right thing. They just don't know how to get out of it.
Yep.
Right. So I don't want that to be the message that people come away with today.
Yeah. Excellent.
But
loud and clear.
I think it's a good foundation to kind of, see it through. As far as your question though, like for that person who feels that way, right? Like how do we get out of that? Right.
Mhm.
Like how do we get out of this negative cycle, right? Because it oftentimes feeds itself. I think a lot of times it's what you just said. It's do what you can. I don't think this has to be brain surgery. Where it can get confusing is in the day of information, social media, where there's so much out there, right? It's hard to know what's right. What's the, who should I listen to? What program should I follow?
Yep.
And a lot of these things do tend to be cookie cutter, programs where it's like, buy this program, do it for 3 months, come back, get another one, right? And it wasn't individualized to you and your needs. Maybe if you've got shoulder pain or hip pain that comes along with all the stuff that you've got, like, how do we work around that, right? Those programs don't know that. So it can be very challenging in a sense of, you get into one of those programs with a good, I think, hope and desire, and then you realize, shoot, a week and a half into it, your shoulder's hurting or something and you can't complete it, right? So that's a bit challenging. And so I do think it needs to be very simple in the beginning, and it's just doing something. And so I try and tell people, if you're not doing much, literally just go for a walk. Just start with steps. Get the steps in. Everyone talks about steps today. Just start walking, right? And make that a priority. I think it can be as simple as that, and you just slowly progress it as you go. This is where I think finding some help, if you're not familiar with movement and exercise, can be helpful, because maybe you're a little bit nervous about how to do the movement or something. And so I think having some help can be good, and that can also provide some of the individualization of what someone needs. But I would say just don't make it too complicated. That it would just start there, right? I think the example you gave is great. I can't really, I think, add to that as much, because it really just, the important thing is just make it simple and doable. So much of, I think, the busyness of our schedules is what prevents us. And so don't think I've got to do it for an hour either, right? It doesn't have to be some creative, beautiful workout program. It doesn't have to be some hour and a half program. Again, if you're not doing much, just do it for 20 minutes.
Yeah. So like, I think you're totally right. In fact, I think, or I hear, or I feel the temptation whenever I've been in that place where I'm that guy coming to you and saying like, okay, where do I go? My temptation is like, I'm going to start with CrossFit.
Yeah.
I'm going to run a marathon. Like, do you hear like they shoot for the moon, that advice, which I think is terrible. Right. You hear that a lot.
Oh yeah, it's the worst advice ever. And I think that's the tendency of everybody, right? It's like, I'm just going to go beat myself up and I'm going to try and feel as sore as I can tomorrow, because that means I did it well, And the reality is that actually probably means you went way too hard. If you're doing it right, you actually probably, you should feel some soreness, right? And feel fatigued at the end of the workout. But if you feel like you can't get out of bed in the morning, like, you went way too hard. Like that's not the point. So, again, keep it simple, keep it easy, keep it enjoyable, because half the battle, I would say way more than half the battle, like 90% of the battle of people being successful with this long term, is being able to continue to do this. And if you feel like garbage after 3 out of the 4 workouts of the week, you're not going to, no one, that's not why we work out. We work out to feel better.
Yep.
Right. I mean, especially at guys in our age. I mean, maybe if you're 18, 19 and you're trying to get that scholarship or you're trying to like make the pros, like I can get that to a certain degree, but like, for you and I, and probably most of your listeners, I would assume like this is about living a full life after 35, right?
Yep.
I mean, we're not looking to be on some magazine. We're not looking to break some world record, right? This is about doing this for the long haul.
Yeah.
And so you need to find something that you can do consistently. And that means you're not going to make your pain worse. You're going to feel good at the end of it. And you're going to, like what you're doing.
Yeah. It's so funny. Well, I think I said to you not too long ago, because Tim's helping put a program together for me. So I'm just exercising from home, and he's doing some work with me through Veritable Wellness. And I had said to him, like, dude, I don't want to do burpees. I don't want to do certain exercises. Don't put them in there. Like, I don't want to do them. And I think though, to the point, like if you hate your life or you're over exercising and you're just like exhausted and it's no fun, you're probably not going to stay with it and see the long-term benefits. And you are so good at just going like, cool, we just won't put it in there, or like, we'll figure out like, what can you do that you don't mind doing so that this is a long race, not a short sprint. But like, it leads me into asking you this question. I hear a lot of guys say, man, like I really want to change, but like, I just can't find the motivation, as if they think motivation is what they need. What are your thoughts on motivation? And like, is that what men need, or do they need something different?
Yeah. There's something that changes inside when I think someone finds that inside kind of visceral conviction to commit to this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've all heard of people and even experienced ourselves the up and down roller coaster ride of doing something at some point, right? When it comes to our health. And I think there is something very personal that comes from it. I can't sit here and tell you, Nate, that like, you need to do this because of this. I could, but it's not going to last very long,
Right?
Until you truly believe it, right? Like until you truly are convinced that this is what Nate needs. Okay. So like there is something very internal that I think no one can fabricate for you. And so some of that I think comes through just realization, life experiences, something that's happened. Sometimes it's tragic. Hopefully it's not too tragic, that does these things. Sometimes you're looking at someone else, and you see their testimony that happens, right? Like, so I think there are things like that kind of trigger that. I will say this with this caveat though, especially with kind of my medical background, is that we need to be careful not to just blame it on lack of motivation or laziness, if you will, because we do need to make sure there's not some kind of medical problem that's leading to the low energy, lack of motivation, just the fatigue that oftentimes prevents us from getting out of bed to do it earlier in the morning, those types of things. Sometimes it is, again, a discipline issue, but we do need to make sure there's not like a low testosterone. We do need to make sure there's not a low thyroid, a low vitamin D, someone's not anemic, right? They don't have some underlying inflammatory conditions that creates chronic fatigue and pain, right? Like, so I think start with seeking medical care to make sure there's not something wrong. And if maybe there has been something in the past, make sure that it's under control. And if you kind of get the green lights, then I think, you need to find that. But where oftentimes that can be so helpful is kind of what you've created, right? In this get to the fight thing. Community is so powerful. And that's partly why I created Veritable Wellness, because prior to Veritable Wellness, for about a year and a half, I would talk to people in the office about, you need to do this for your pain. You need to do this to get your blood sugar right, lose some weight, whatever, and I would sit there and I would literally talk to them for like an hour and a half. And they would get excited in the office, but all the hard work happens outside when they leave the office, right? And what I realized was it's not a matter of understanding for a lot of these people. It's they need some help, right? They need the community. I think we see this in everything in life, right? That's why God created the body of Christ. It's why he, the first kind of ordinance he has in scripture is the family unit, right? We are created to be, community, right? I mean, the Trinity, right, is God himself is a community. So like, I think there's this idea that like to try and get through life on your own, or to live by this philosophy of I'll pull myself up by my own bootstraps, I think is a very easy way to get burnt out and just more depressed and frustrated about it. So
Absolutely.
there's a mix of, okay, let's look at the physical again, make sure everything's fine. Let's self-evaluate, do some real solid introspection and see, okay, what priorities do I need to fix and what do I need to understand about myself better? But also, where's your community?
Mhm.
Where are the people there helping you? And I think if you can look at those three things, you'll probably at least find some progress there.
That's excellent, man. Yeah, that's excellent. And so right on. It makes me think back to my own story again, just to help guys connect to this. Like, and this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about a minute ago. One of the things that you told me was like, don't worry about the diet this first month. Let's just get some habits started. And maybe other times it's let's worry about the diet first, then we'll get into it. But I love that it wasn't like, dude, we're just going to go hammer this thing, which I'm kind of prone to. Like, that is a little bit of me. Like, all right, sweet, let's go get it. But in that moment, I wasn't there, and maybe you just read that because I was slumping down and looked like a pile of crap. But like, it was what I needed to hear. Is like, let's just bite one thing off at a time, and then we'll just, and then I would just go check in, I think, weekly during that stretch.
Yeah.
And that was huge. That was the community aspect. That was let's not overwhelm you with this. Let's not shoot for CrossFit yet. It was you telling me in that moment all these things that you're saying now, and man, if a guy is listening to this, and I can think of so many of you listening to this that talk to me about this, it's about connecting with a guy like Tim, finding some help, some medical help, because maybe there is something different, and you're just thinking, man, I'm just a loser and I can't get this figured out. Maybe there's something going on that you just need a professional like Tim to help walk you through, to do some tests or whatever, and it just might make you go like, dude, wow, that's so encouraging to know, right?
Yeah.
And if nothing else, you'll find somebody to encourage you. And so that piece of the community, again, is really critical. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but go ahead. Yep.
Well, there's another story that came to mind.
Yeah.
That relates to kind of that like introspection part of it, I think, because the other two, maybe they're a little bit easier, right? The battle with self is always very, very difficult.
Yep.
I mean, that's a challenge we all fight in different aspects of our life. And I think it's a battle that, we'll take to the grave. I mean, we never really conquer the flesh in this life, right? And there's a story. You know who Ethan Suplee is?
No.
Remember the Titans?
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so remember the Titans. Ethan Suplee was the big lineman, the huge, like 300-pound white dude with the long blonde hair, right? And everyone loved his character because it was just a funny guy in the movie. I don't know him personally, but he played a lot of roles like that. And I think for a long time in his Hollywood career, he kind of had embraced this is who I am, as just a really big dude. At some point, though, I don't follow the guy very much. Like, I don't follow him on social media or anything, but I had seen from a fitness guy that actually does follow him, maybe even helped him, I don't know. But he was sharing his story, and he said at some point in his journey, he said that, this is Ethan Suplee, he said that he killed his clone today. And it was this idea that he realized at some point that what he was doing was going to kill him, right? And the idea is that, there is very much a change in your perception of what you need to do about yourself. It's kind of like the alcoholic, right? That like, if someone really gets clean and wins the battle of alcohol, everything about them changes, right? Their friends, where they drive home from work, right? Like, they don't go past the same gas stations and the same bars on the way home from work. They find a new route because they know that those things bring back the challenges that are going to just be too hard for them, right? And so I think that part of this is probably the hardest part, and it really kind of gets to the nitty gritty of dealing with that. And that's where I think the community really helps, is because, to try and do that on your own, I mean, we're to bear with each other's one another's burdens, right?
Mhm.
Like that's part of that. And so I think that's really, really important. Why I'm really excited what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
So,
Yeah, no, I've got to say, like the shameless plug for Get in the Fight for those that are listening is it's that community. In fact, we aim for 4 principles to like this ideal perspective of we have these phrases that we use that I'm a man of honor. I have integrity in my private life and in my public life, and I keep the commitments that I've made to God and to others. I'm a man of discipline. I do the hard right thing over the easy wrong thing every time. And we have these 4 things that we just kind of pray through. God, help me to be that. I'm not that always. And nobody is perfectly except for one man. But we are aiming for that. And it really is this internal dialogue and change. Like there are many days with the program that I follow that you've given me over the course of time. And even currently, I don't always wake up like Thursday and I'm supposed to do leg day. And I'm like, I don't really want to. But I have this internal dialogue between myself inside where I'm saying, but I'm a man of discipline. I do the hard right thing, which sometimes is just doing the thing I don't want to do. It's many times that. And it's this like aim at being a better man, living a bigger life. And it involves dealing with and killing the clone, like Ethan was talking about. So I love what you're saying. And again, this is a community. You can check it out. It's free for Christian men, getinthefight.club, where we're pursuing that together. Imperfect guys, just trying to figure out like what area of your life do you need help in. And conversations like this just help us be better men. So yeah, man, right on. I know, by the way, that we're inching out of time, and it's for sure that we're going to have you back on because there's so many other things I want to deal with and talk to you and get your take on. But I want to spend a few minutes because this is like a perfect lead in, I think, the way this conversation has gone into diet and nutrition. And again, not that we can cover that in just a few minutes, but let's start the conversation for guys today that are listening to this. So this is a huge topic. There's a million directions. I'll let you direct it, but I'll kind of lay some groundwork and then you take it where you want.
okay.
But what is the best diet for me, Tim, when I'm sitting in your office, somebody comes in, right?
Yeah.
What they're going to ask you questions like this, like, well, what's the best diet for me? Is it paleo? Is it intermittent fasting? Is it carnivore, keto, the Daniel diet? Rather, I mean, just trying to think, like spitting out names that I know of, right? Just whatever, when somebody comes to you and you're talking about diet and food, talk to us a little bit about what comes to your mind here.
Yeah. So this is a discussion that could probably go 2-3 hours
For sure.
On a podcast. So I'll kind of try and answer this so that it's helpful, but still generic and we don't get too far off the rabbit trail here. So I want to preface it with, if there's any kind of health condition, you need to make sure that you are consulting with either your doctor and a nutritionist, because things like diabetes, hyperlipidemia, certain inflammatory conditions, chronic kidney disease, right, change the answer to this question very, very much.
Yep.
So do make sure that whatever health issues you're dealing with, this question is thought of in that context. All right. Now, that said, I will say, generally speaking, it's going to depend on your goal. Okay. So if you're just looking to lose weight, you're really just kind of trying to limit calorie intake in some way, shape, or form. And there's really kind of 3 ways you can do that. Okay. If you're trying to put on muscle mass, there's a different way to do that. If you're trying to really gain strength and power, there's a different way to do that. Right. And I think all of those things serve a purpose in the quality of our health as we get older. It's not just about there's a lot of talk to these days. You've probably heard, and I'm sure your listeners heard, if they've turned into some kind of Instagram reel or podcast about nutrition, making sure you're getting plenty of protein today, right? And that's probably the core of whatever nutrition that you kind of take on is going to be at the center of that. But, as we get older, strength, muscle mass, all of that declines. And if you want to live a high quality life, that's going to be important. So that's where all this protein talk comes from. All right. So little rabbit trail there. And that is important because a lot of people, when they lose weight, are trying to cut fat, right? Trim down. they leave that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they compromise a very important health metric, which contributes to not just quality of life, but even health, length of life, lifespan. Okay. So it's important to think about it in those contexts. So if we're talking about, again, looking at the goal, what's our goal? Weight loss is most people's goal, I think, is to lean down, at least after 35. That's a big goal. A lot of younger guys probably wanting to put on muscle and look different, which is, again, I think still important even for guys like you and me as we're older. But there's 3 ways you can kind of lean down or cut down to kind of address the weight loss issue. All right. And so I look at it as there's whatever form of cut and restriction you do, you need to do what feels least restrictive.
Okay.
Right? Like it just needs to feel good, because no one is going to do something they absolutely hate for a very long time. And that's why so many people ride the roller coaster. They get on this intermittent fasting diet and it's like, I can't not eat for 18 hours. I did it for 2 weeks and I lost 5 pounds and it was great, but forget this, And so whether it's paleo or keto, right? And no one's eating carbs, like who likes to do that? So, I mean, you have to find, the takeaway there is find what you can consistently do. Or in other words, find what feels the least restrictive. Okay. But whatever you do, you're going to restrict in some form. So you're either going to restrict through time, which is intermittent fasting essentially. And there's all kinds of ways to do intermittent fasting, right? So you can go look that up and find different ways, but time restriction oftentimes will lead to calorie deficits. All right. Because in the end, weight loss is just a matter of, are you burning calories? Okay.
Yep.
The other one is going to be really kind of a macronutrient cut. And so that's the different flavor of, the paleo versus this Atkins, so low fat versus low carb,
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And so if you have a preference, some people don't mind not eating carbs. Like I don't mind it. I generally actually feel more bloated when I eat them. And so I tend to eat lower carbs anyways, and that doesn't bother me.
Mm-hmm.
And then flexible dieting is another way to do it. Flexible dieting is really kind of looking at, just the calorie metric. So you're not going to look at your fats and your carbs and all of that stuff. You're just going to say, I'm going to enjoy the things that I enjoy. And as long as the calories are under whatever your set calorie intake is for the day, you should lose weight.
Mm.
All right. Now, I will say this, for most people to be successful and not be miserable at this, the weight loss should be pretty slow. Okay. If you put yourself in a calorie deficit around 500 calories a day, you're probably going to end up at about a pound a week, which for most people is kind of frustrating because they want to lose it sooner,
Mm-hmm.
right? They get to this time of year and they're like, oh, summer's coming. Got to look good in that wedding dress or something, but they're not going to lose the 20 pounds in 2 months doing it that way. And so this is where the consistency part of it that I was talking about, so that you can do this long term, have not just the goals of this summer in mind, but think about, what do I want to feel like and look like at 85? And then once you have those goals set, I think finding what's going to be least restrictive makes a lot more sense, and you can be more successful in the end.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so way to take like a world of conversations that could have gone 1,000 ways and at least just condense it into some really helpful stuff. I mean, yeah, man, that's exactly right. That's so good. So I think there's a million ways we could take the diet conversation, the nutrition conversation, but man, there's some really great stuff there, Tim, that I think guys just can hone in on something, like pick a path, make sure you're communicating with your health professional. I think that's a really important part. There could be absolutely, especially as we age, things are just different. Like I know for me, like things are different. We don't have time to get into all those things, maybe in the next one, but things that were not present in my 20s or 30s that are there now in my 40s that are making a difference in my health. And I'm glad I've got you. I'm glad I've got somebody that can say, all right, let's check out the whole spectrum of this and figure out for me, where to go. So yeah, guys that are listening, I just think start with a medical professional, but then I want to lead into this too of like connecting with Tim potentially. Now, if you don't live in Michigan, again, we've got listeners from all over the world. You obviously may not, but you might be interested in chatting with him, figuring out Veritable Wellness. And so, Tim, like how can they connect with you? Maybe if they're not local, if they are local, what kind of access do they have to you, or what would you suggest for the guys that are wanting to know more about you and what you do?
Yeah. So if you're local, obviously hooking up with me one-on-one is really convenient and nice. I do have my medical career is based out of Whole Family Direct Care, which is in Marshall. And so you can find us online at wholefamilydirectcare.com. And you'd be happy to kind of set up a meet and greet. And if that's something you're interested in, be happy to maybe try and get you in there and set something up to kind of approach it more from a medical background, obviously, and address any kind of physical needs in that sense. I do have Veritable Wellness, which was born out of Whole Family Direct Care in the sense of being able to work with people one-on-one and get in the trenches with them on the day-to-day basis. So, I actually meet with those people right now twice a week to actually, move with them, exercise with them, and get them moving. And then throughout the week, I design a program with them which is kind of what, you're doing right now, where on an app, after I've kind of gone through a physical assessment to see what your needs are, we can find a plan that's very specific and individualized to what your needs. And you're not just getting a cookie cutter kind of program. And so that's through Veritable Wellness. It's a little bit more hands-on in that sense. One-on-one coaching is what it kind of feels like. And that is, again, directed towards kind of like chronic pain is a big part of that. And then obviously anyone who wants to just kind of metabolically get healthy is kind of a goal there. And that's, again, still in the Battle Creek area. But if you wanted to kind of touch base, Veritable Wellness, Veritable_wellness is the Instagram handle, which I think I gave you to throw in the notes or something, where we can kind of talk and get in contact through that.
Awesome.
That method.
Yeah. And again, just highly recommend it. Tim, you can tell, is just a great guy, knows his stuff, and will point you in the right direction, but he has a genuine desire to serve through the things that he's experienced. We didn't even get into some of his story of his own personal experiences with his own health journey. Maybe in the next one, we'll get into that possibly, but he cares and would love to help point you in the right direction. So I will have show notes for you there with Facebook page, Instagram. Again, if you're not local, definitely at least follow in the Instagram. He's a great follow, puts out great content, things to think through on his Instagram. And then again, if you are local to us here in mid-Michigan, definitely check out, say it again, is it wholefamilydirectcare.com? Is that right?
Yes.
Wholefamilydirectcare.com. Tim, I'm hoping and I'm trusting that we'll be able to make round 2 at least of this come back. There's so many things. I know guys are going to be so engaged with this conversation. I bet they're asking themselves like, yeah, but I wish I knew a little bit about this, this, and this. So we'll schedule a round 2 to come up here soon. And I know guys will be really interested in that. But for today, man, thanks for spending an hour with us and sharing your wisdom and your care. I know that it's genuine for you, and it like you're doing a great job in helping men and women be their best version. So appreciate you.
Yeah. No, I'd love to do a second round. I feel like we got a good kind of feet wet kind of experience here, but there's so much more that we can get into, and I think provide a lot more helpful information. So love to be a part of that sometime.
Cool. Thanks so much, Tim. And for you listeners, thank you for, again, connecting with the Get in the Fight podcast and show. Be sure to subscribe. And again, I told you at the beginning, but if you think this is a helpful conversation, if you're listening to this and this is for you, maybe you're a woman listening, go like, I got to get this to my husband or a friend at church, whatever, take the URL, share it in social media, share it in a text, whatever it is, but it makes a difference to us and it'll make a difference to somebody else. So in the meantime, get in the fight, live your best life, live a bigger life, get health, prioritize all of those things, follow Tim, and we'll see you in the next side. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.